You've heard us say 1,000 times that it's critical in 2024 to lead with significance, not just with success. What does that mean? What does it look like? Well, today in this podcast, you're going to hear from a CEO in an architectural firm that's going to talk specifically about the mindset shift that he's made and how that's affecting how he leads his firm and how he leads in the industry. Welcome to the PioneerCast. I'm DeWayne Abels, founder and president of Pioneer IQ. I hope over the course of the next 15 or 20 minutes, you're going to learn something that truly helps you understand how to inspire and lead your team and to ultimately corral them into doing something greater than just dishing out paychecks. We have a ton of talent in our industry, but everyone is wanting to figure out how they can be significant. We're in the middle of a podcast series that we're referring to as the 4 mindset shifts. And what has happened over the last couple of years is we've identified that there are 4 mindset shifts that are literally preventing people, organizations, and teams from growing. They want more consultants. People read more books. There's all these ideas, but at the end of the day, those are helpful. But without these 4 mindset shifts, it just isn't going to be easy to implement into your business. If you or someone on your team truly wants to better engage people and maximize their potential and get the most out of their team, I'm borderline begging you to get them to a boot camp. At these boot camps, I guarantee you 3 things are going to happen. Number 1, you and the people that you bring from your team are going to come together as a team and gel more so than any other time. Number 2, you're going to help them make life decisions about who they are, what they're great at, and what they could become at home and on your team and at work. And then thirdly, you're going to be able to see into what you could become as a leader, what it means to lead in 2024, and how to maximize the potential of the people around you, both at home and at work. Take the next steps. Go to our website, pioneerq.com. We've got these all across the country, and sign up. We're in the middle of the first episode focusing on helping you to lead with significance versus success. I'm really excited about this particular episode. I've asked a good friend of mine and a great client of ours, great business partner, Dennis Burns, to join us. Dennis is the president of Pulse Design Group. Hey, man, thanks for taking the time to stop in and help us out with this particular topic.
Man, thanks, DeWayne. I love talking about this, so thanks for including me.
You bet. So just in full transparency, this is a really simple mindset that we talk about all the time. But I think people have a really hard time understanding, like, what is it? What does it mean? And how does it actually work in my life and in my leadership? And as we were working through this with Dan and recording the tactical side of the podcast, I got to tell you, we had a couple of leaders come to mind. Both you and Rich Smith have done such a great job of leading with significance versus just success. And I wanted to be able to have you tell your story on how you've made that shift from just focusing on being successful versus being significant and then leading your team with that. For the few people on planet Earth who don't know Dennis Burns, Dennis, just take a second and fill us in on who is Dennis Burns, what you're all about, as a human being. Like, give us some insights on you.
That's great. Thanks again, DeWayne. So, born and raised in Trenton, New Jersey, and my love growing up was baseball. Little league, middle school, high school, junior college, aspirations to play in the big leagues. Didn't happen. It's a similar dream to thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. But nonetheless, chased the dream of baseball. I uprooted from Trenton, New Jersey, and landed in Joplin, Missouri, at Missouri Southern State University. I got a baseball scholarship. It's what I wanted to do. I chased the dream. So my background really is it's more about determination. It's more about structure. It's more about constantly improving and challenging myself. So I'm not a technical expert, which is very interesting that we're having this conversation, because I'm not, I spent 15 years in the construction industry, but I'm not a construction management or construction science graduate. Now 4.5 years in the architecture firm. I'm not a technical expert, did not go to school for architecture. So my background is a little bit different in terms of, how I ended up here and the things that I do at Pulse Design Group. And all of those experiences up till now have made me who I am. And I feel like for the first time ever, I'm in the right spot. because of our message and because of what we're trying to do, it's bigger than just architecture. So that's how it came to be.
Man, so one of the things I truly love about you is that you're a contractor that's president of an architecture firm. Like that is totally rad. I love that. But you are like you're like the epitome of the fact that our industry is in dire need of leadership and inspiration, not technical expertise. We have a ton of expertise, but you're an example of that whole reality that we need inspiring leaders to build and grow and scale great firms. We don't need more technical expertise to do that. We need great leadership. So I'm excited to hear about that. So for those of you who don't know Pulse Design Group, Dennis, just give us an overview of what Pulse Design Group's all about.
44 years in business this year. Started way back when, two guys in a basement with a dream. It's awesome. Do you think about a lot of the firms that started that way, that we know all about those. But today, 44 years later, we are currently at 48 people strong. We are architecture, interior design, medical equipment planning, and we're all over the country and primarily working here in the Kansas City region, but we are coast to coast currently, east, west, south, north. We're all over the place, which is fantastic. So over the last couple of years, the message of how we talk about ourselves really changed. And you were a big part of that. You and Dr. Charlie and Stephanie and your whole team, a big part of where we are today. And earlier this morning, I'm driving in and I'm thinking about this conversation. And it is amazing because when you talk about significance and leading with purpose, regardless of what it is you're talking about, what I've learned is that the answers are right in front of us the entire time. Mm-hmm. They're not in hiding. It's not in a book. It's not a class. It is discovery. It's conversation. But the answers are right in front of us. We focus 100% on healthcare. That's it. Anything to do with healthcare, surgery centers, MRIs, medical office buildings, whatever it is, healthcare, that's it, 100%. So we feel as if our story has a certain level of compassion already built into it. But I'm excited to talk to you about kind of where we are now in piling on top of that compassionate mission that we already serve.
If you look at Kansas City, you have a national footprint. I mean, you're certainly experts at healthcare. There's no one ever going to question that. But you look at Kansas City, and Kansas City as a market alone is a ton of design firms, a ton of architects. I mean, there's a lot of that here in Kansas City. It's just a design and construction mecca. But when you came in and you were asked to take the lead as the president of Pulse, man, help me understand like what was going through your mind, what was going through your heart. Like, help me understand like what you started seeing, and help me understand like what the vision came out as for Pulse. Like, talk us through the bigger picture. What is that?
Great question. First and foremost, we had the owners of the firm at the time were very clear on what they were good at and what they weren't. So hats off to them. That's kind of rare when you get an ownership and principalship group that is willing to be that vulnerable and humble and say, look, this is outside of our bounds. We could use some help. And so that's how that happened. So first of all, tip of the cap to the principals at Pulse Design Group. And so part of our journey, when I got on board, I was like, wow, 15 years as a contractor, now sitting inside an architecture firm, this is going to be fun. Well, that quickly led to my better understanding who these people are and what drives them and what they do and how much passion is within that. And so when talking to our staff and trying to figure out how do we determine, and lean in more on why it is what we do, as opposed to it being another project, or, hey, has anyone called on health system XYZ in a while? What do they have going on? Why aren't we doing more work over here? And we paused there for a minute because we felt like the conversation needed to be bigger. Sure, architecture has to happen and the planning has to happen and the conversations need to be held. but what is it really? And that is where this transformation in mindset started for us, when we really started asking these questions and listening to each other with all the different perspectives. That was pivotal, and I remember it very clearly, and it's changed my life, actually, and I'm grateful for that.
Say more about that. I'm going off script a little bit, but you just
Mhm.
mentioned the term it changed my life. How did it change your life? Was it your
Mhm.
motivation or like what?
Mhm.
Explain that. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So as we went through this visioning process, this purpose process, like why we do what we do, there were things that were talked about that more closely related to me personally as opposed to professionally. And I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
could say that for everybody that was around the table during that process,
Yeah.
because we're now not just talking about work anymore. Now we're able to reflect on who we are as people. Now
Yeah.
we're able to reflect on our families and our upbringing and maybe the things we had or we didn't have. So now we're really talking about making a true difference. And when you talk about healthcare, the things that are most commonly talked about are affordability, or talk about access, and you talk about quality. Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
when you start really weaving those things into the mindset of designing healthcare facilities for today, that will last for the next 50 plus years, having that mindset about designing something with quality, access, and affordability, man, it changes everything. And it changes the conversations we have here internally as a team, because it's talking about life. And
Mm-hmm.
when we started to share that notion with our team internally, this is where we're headed. We're curious about your opinions. What does it mean to you? How does it resonate? And so we held kind of charrettes internally, and we broke into teams, and we talked about these things in great detail. Oh man, I'm getting chills actually talking about it, because what they came back with, we never talked like this before. We
Mm-hmm.
never had conversations about why it is, what we do for a living, why it matters so much, and
Mm-hmm.
to listen to those that are in the weeds, doing the work, facing clients day in, day out, to hear them tell their stories even today, 2+ years later. It's like, man, wouldn't it have been awesome if we could have done this 30 years ago?
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah.
It would have been great if we could have done this 30 years ago, because we talk differently. We're just having different conversations. And yes, you need work. Yes, you have to win more clients. Yes, you have to win more projects. But I feel like the way that we're talking about it is different. It's just way different.
Yeah. Well, explain that to us. Like, how do you describe the significance that Pulse is trying to have? What is it, a vision or movement, or
Mhm.
explain that to us?
Yeah. So when we went through the process, we quickly realized that these ideas are awesome and these goals are lofty and they're aspirational, which they should be. But we also needed to maybe drill down a little bit in terms of how are we going to track this? Like, how are we going to identify when we're doing things that we said we wanted to do? For example, like, we want to transform healthcare. We want to transform the way healthcare is designed, delivered, experienced, and received. It's like, okay, we're group 48 people. So you want to transform healthcare. That's correct. Okay. So how are you going to do it? Well, the way we're doing it is by having different conversations. Instead of user groups about, we have X amount of square footage, what goes where, how many people, what are your operating times, all the different questions that need to be asked in terms of, on the onset of design. Our kickoff meetings now start for every project. Let's talk about transformational healthcare with the user groups. And let's talk to them about the difference it's going to make in their communities. And let's track that. And let's be
Mm-hmm.
talking about these experiences with other healthcare systems we're fortunate enough to work with. Like, here is what we just implemented in community XYZ. Here's what we started with. Here was the charge. But because of the lens and because of the difference in conversation, we did it differently. And the results we're exponential in terms of how it impacts the community, which impacts people, which impacts lives, which impacts everybody. So it's fascinating that we're having conversations that it doesn't feel like anyone else is having. And I think it starts in the very beginning. And it's, I wish you could see and hear some of these meetings we're having so you can see the expressions on the faces of our clients. It's amazing.
I would love to. So, breaking that down a little bit, I'm just really curious. So, how does the revelation of that significance and that vision, how do you use that to recruit like new architects or new people to Pulse? Like, how do you apply it in recruiting?
Yeah, great question. And it's made a huge difference because we had a good story to tell, but now we have a more impactful story. It's a human story. It's not about how many hours a week or indirect labor versus direct labor or your salary or how much vacation. We talk more about the impact that we're trying to make and the things that we're doing and the way that we're thinking. And I will say that when we tell this story to prospective Pulse Design Group teammates, the follow-up emails are generally something of the sort that suggests, wow, I thought I was coming to an interview to talk about my next career step or what differences Pulse Design plans on making architecturally. But I left with an entirely different perspective about who you are and what motivates you every day. I'd really like to be a part of that. So instead of our asking for, and will you join, and we have this opportunity we feel we great for, which still may all be true. But when you get emails like that time after time after time stating, this is a movement I want to be a part of, what you're talking about is what I've been seeking, man, that just feels really good. It means like we're finally having the conversations that we needed to have. And so the recruiting standpoint is great. As far as retention, it's even better. They are the best spokesperson for Pulse Design Group. And it's been this transformation the whole time. So recruiting and retention around this mission and purpose has, it's been significant, which is what we're talking about. It's been significant.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm just curious. Everybody I think has people on their team that may be drifting off, right? And they become disengaged. How do you use, what would you say to an architect who maybe drifting off and maybe disengaged? How do you bring them back into the fold, using that significance?
I mean, that conversation more than likely has zero to do about work, to be honest. That conversation has little to do about career. And that is where I think the magic is, because now, again, like with clients, we're not talking about just another project, right? We're talking about making a huge difference. And that's the same with our talent. We all have to do something for a living. We all have to have our needs met. We all have to provide. And then they all pick on what levels they need to provide. So let's put the career aside for a minute. Let's talk about what makes you excited. What are you passionate about? And I know it sounds cliche, and I know it sounds like, oh, everyone's doing that. Well, first of all, they're not. And second of all, it's hard. It's hard because you have to really listen, and you have to be patient, and the ability to kind of lean in with a heart full of love and care to really listen to what this person is about. That will tell you all you need to know about whether they're in the right spot. And so I think by finding out what moves them is the first step, because they may not be in the right spot. This vision, this purpose, this everyday thing we do, it might not be. But the conversations are that important. So if you're not taking that time, whether you or someone else in your leadership group, several times a year are reconnecting with your people about what moves them, that might be a misstep, something to think about.
Dennis, help us understand how your vision and this movement plays into you going out and choosing clients, or maybe even more importantly, choosing you. And I think it's really important to explain to us, like, how do you communicate the difference between Pulse and other firms,
Mm.
and then, like, how do they respond? Help us understand
Mm.
how some of your CEOs and some of your clients are responding to that.
Yeah, great question. So before we launched this officially, outside of communicating internally with our team and getting their perspectives, helping make sure it was exactly what it needed to be, we also floated this by a few of our key clients. We had CEOs and COOs here at Pulse Design Group headquarters, and we sat them down, and it was more of a kind of a moderated discussion in front of our entire staff. So we have the COO of a large entity here in Kansas City, been a client for 30 plus years. And we talked to this person about what we're trying to do and where we're going. And here's where we landed. And we need your opinion on whether or not we're in the right spot. And so that's when we did two different sessions. One, we would unveil our vision, which is transformational healthcare. And by 2033, we're going to do these things. And here's how we're going to get there. There was that big vision, but then there was that purpose about our ability to exist and to unify and serve alongside our partners in healing and all those different things. And when these CEOs heard this, DeWayne, I am serious. They were so moved that we are taking the time to talk about things other than technical abilities, other than understanding code, other than trying to figure out a schedule and a budget. We're not having those conversations anymore. And I can tell you, I remember vividly the shift in that relationship with these C-suite leaders of different systems, because again, that is refreshing conversation to them. That's all they hear all day with staff and with operations and with surveys. And finally, I could see in their eyes that finally you get it. Now you're speaking our language. Now you understand how we think. And man, that was amazing. And it made a difference. In addition to the clients, we are now having these same conversations with our trade partners, talking about engineering and general contractors and other consultants all throughout the spectrum. And we're bringing them in groups, and we're talking to them about what we're trying to do. We're going to go through our guiding principles and our purpose, but most importantly, our vision, where we're going. And we're asking them, can we count on you? Can we count on you as teammates to think in this manner, to think about how to transform healthcare? We're going to have these conversations at the beginning of every project. Here's the project. How can it be better? And we're documenting all of it, and we're sharing it with the client. And it's just different. Our partners are viewing us different. We're getting phone calls about all kinds of different things, not just project work. We're being asked to come in and share how, in fact, we landed where we landed, and how can we help them kind of get to that same mindset. It's not easy, but again, the conversations are different, and it's more impactful. And so for that, I'm very grateful, and got to keep going. Can't lose the steam, can't lose the energy. It's an everyday reminder of why we do what we do. And once you get there, though, man, it's powerful.
So, Dennis, I think the majority of the design and construction companies in general are really working off of an old mindset where they're leading with success factors like paychecks or whatever. Is it worth making that transition from just motivating people around paychecks and positions and opportunity and titles to helping them to understand the significant impact that their team or their organization can have on people in the community, etc.?
Wow. Kind of a loaded question. I think you know the answer. The answer is it's well worth the investment. It depends on your business model, and it depends on your perspective. Are you in it for the money? Are you in it to maybe build the project, the the business and then sell it. It depends on what you're after. But if you want a life and a career that might be a little bit more impactful, a little more thoughtful, a life that you can look back on and maybe ask yourself, how many people did I affect? Did I impact? You got to take a look at it, because the paycheck is a paycheck, and you're going to spend it on what you need to spend it on. It feels better to me to spend the money after I know what I earned it by doing.
Why do you, you know a lot of executives in the AEC space.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard for them to make the transformation? Why is it so hard for them to make the shift from leading with paychecks and positions and responsibility to leading with inspiration and significance? Why is it so hard?
The only thing I can think of, and that is an amazing question. There's a couple things that come to mind. It's either ego or it's unwillingness to change. Because to lay this on the table in front of the whole staff and tell them kind of like, we need your approval here. Are we on the right path? And to hear them emphatically all nod, yes, this is what I believe in. This is why I do what I do. Awesome. Now we can tell the story to our clients and our partners. And unless you just want to continually check your monthly revenues, your utilization rates, your net operating profits, unless you want to just spend all your time in there, which is important. But if you really want to make a difference, man, you look beyond that. What's the impact you're having? And I think that it's a very vulnerable situation to put all of this on the table and to talk to someone that you may or may not know very well for the very first time as a C-suite executive of a healthcare system that you're trying to learn more about. It's a vulnerable situation. You got to believe it. You have to believe in what it is you're thinking and feeling. You know what this has also told us, DeWayne? There are some firms that we're just not suited for. There are some systems that don't align. And that's okay, because their mantra, their marching orders are coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we're just not aligned at this moment.
Yeah. That's a great point.
It happens.
Man, I appreciate your insight. In preparation for this, shooting this with me, I threw out some basic questions to you. Some of what you just talked about is way more helpful than just the questions I threw out. So I really appreciate you going off script and being vulnerable and talking it through. But man, I appreciate your insight on that. You guys certainly have a movement that people are gravitating towards. People that don't even know that we worked with you guys on some of that. They've actually sent me your manifesto video, say, hey, check out what Pulse Design Group's doing. I was kind of like, yeah, I was kind of there when we did it, but man, it's so cool to see people jumping on board with you. And more importantly, man, I love walking in y'all's office and seeing people fired up and lit up about, how you're affecting and changing communities, not just designing another ER or, some sort of a space. So great work, man. Thank you for joining me. And I hope this has helped you. If you're a leader in the design or construction industry, business is personal. Culture trumps productivity because culture drives productivity. And Dennis has given you 15 or 20 minutes of insights on how he's building and driving the culture around what they're doing in our world with healthcare in order to impact people and help them to see their significance in what we're doing every single day at work. We're hoping you can pick something up and do the same thing with your team, but it does take courage. Please know that's what your folks need. Lead on.